Hey guys. So if you're watching this, you've probably noticed that my background looks really different. And that's true. Right now I'm moving between places, office spaces. So I'm in my normal home office space, which is kind of like a storage room. So I hope that doesn't distract you very much, but really what I want to share with you today is a pretty important message in light of the Independence Day holiday that is coming up. And I hope that this message will inspire you and encourage you to live free in such a way that you are able to further freedom, not only for your own country, but also for the world. And that you can draw closer to God because of your better understanding regarding your freedoms and American independence. As Latter-day Saints, our hearts must not only turn to the blessings of freedom, but they must ache also with the weight of responsibility that accompanies such divine gifts. As we approach Independence Day, let us not simply reflect on history, but let's confront living, breathing principles that underpin our very existence. The sacred flame of liberty, the bedrock of religious freedom. The scriptures thunder this truth. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. This is not a gentle suggestion. It is a declaration of eternal cause and effect. The true freedom is not a political convenience. It is a spiritual mandate, a gift from our Heavenly Father, without which our very purpose on this earth is jeopardized. Few modern prophets grasped the urgency of our constitutional duty with the fervor of President Ezra Taft Benson. He did not merely teach that the Constitution was a glorious standard, he proclaimed that it is a sacred covenant, divinely wrought. With prophetic insight, he declared,
I testify that America is a choice land. God raised up the founding fathers of the United States of America and established the inspired Constitution. This was the required prologue for the restoration of the gospel.
We should understand the gravity of that quote. In essence, the very restoration may not have unfolded without the Constitution and ergo the American Revolution. President Benson frequently invoked Doctrine and Covenants section 101 verse 80, where the Lord unequivocally states, I established the Constitution of this land by the hands of wise men whom I raised up unto this very purpose. This is not mere historical commentary. It is a divine imprimatur placing the Constitution in a position akin to Holy Writ. He emphasized that the paramount purpose of this divine establishment
will preserve to men their God-given agency. This he did because the whole gospel of Jesus Christ presupposes men's untrammeled right to exercise their free agency.
Our eternal salvation hinges upon this agency, and the Constitution is its earthly guardian. For President Benson, defending the Constitution was not merely a civic pleasantry. It was a religious imperative, a test of our very discipleship. He urged us with urgent tones to
We must learn the principles of the Constitution and then abide by its precepts.
He issued a stark prophetic warning against the insidious erosion of freedom, stating, every time you give up any of your freedoms, you jeopardize these 4 freedoms of which I have spoken. He passionately believed, and we must likewise believe, or we should likewise believe, that our stand for freedom is a most basic part of our religion, and to neglect it is to neglect a part of the gospel itself. President Dallin H, with his profound legal mind and apostolic vision, has not merely championed religious freedom. He has sounded the alarm, declaring it the very first freedom, the very cornerstone upon which all other liberties rest. He teaches with chilling clarity that religious freedom is not just fundamental to God's plan, but it is under assault in our modern world, and its erosion threatens the very fabric of a free society. And if you've watched any of my other videos, including this one here, you'll see how even in the cultural changes that presuppose greater levels of agency, but also are drawn upon ancient evils and ancient gods and those rituals, you would understand this at an even deeper level. In a landmark address, President Oaks stated,
"Freedom of religion and belief is an essential condition for a free society. It's the oldest of our internationally recognized fundamental rights. In the current list of international human rights, it was the first to receive formal protection. As such, religious freedom can be seen as the grandparent of all the other rights."
This is not an abstract legal theory. It is a warning that if this grandparent freedom falls, its progeny, the freedom of speech, assembly, and the press, will inevitably follow. He has further explained that the free exercise of religion guaranteed by the First Amendment is not merely the freedom to worship within the confines of our chapels. It is the freedom to live according to one's beliefs in both public and private life, provided such actions do not infringe upon the rights of others. He reminds us that religious liberty promotes pluralism and peace. But let's not misunderstand. This peace is not achieved through capitulation, but through the robust defense of the right for all to live their conscience. Quote,
"Religious liberty has allowed people of diverse religious traditions to live together in peace and friendship despite profound disagreements."
President Oaks has also carefully balanced the concept of religious freedom with the vital need for tolerance and respect for others, which is a pretty big deal nowadays where everyone wants to confront and fight one another and not have real conversations. President Oaks teaches that our tolerance and respect for others and their beliefs does not cause us to abandon our commitment to the truths we understand and the covenants we have made. In essence, we can be peacemakers while still contending for the truth. To contend without being contentious, which we've also talked about on this channel a lot. So we're called to be tolerant, yes, but never to be silent in the face of moral relativism that seeks to undermine eternal truths. We're never asked to be passive and to merely let these freedoms slide because we should not fight for what is true. Elder David A. Bednar frequently brings us back to the foundational doctrine of agency, revealing its profound connection to freedom and its role as the eternal battleground. He emphasizes that agency is not a trivial concept. It is
the capacity for independent action and choice. You and I are agents, and we primarily are to act and not just be acted upon.
That's an interesting concept, though, to say that we are supposed to act and not to be that we're supposed to act and not to be acted upon, because so much in this world tries to point us in a style of living and even in a culture that says that you are nothing but objects and the environments around you will determine your future, your destiny, pretty much everything else about you. And that you must then control your environment. You must then invest all your time and money and your devotion, your worship to your environment in order to help you, the object, become better off, right? So that encourages things like, getting, unaliving unborn children, or not having children altogether, or advocating for laws that tax people excessively to pay for things that people ought to take care of for themselves, or to create a welfare system in which people are incentivized to not work and be self-reliant. There are a lot of negative outcomes that happen when we treat our own selves, our lives, like objects rather than actors that act upon the objects in this universe. This is a stark warning against becoming objects passively acted upon by societal currents or political whims. See, Elder Bednar, he helps us understand that while we are free to choose, like it says in 2 Nephi, this freedom is inextricably linked to accountability. See, he clarifies with piercing insight that our agency is not a license to do whatever we want. Instead, when we enter into sacred covenants, we voluntarily surrender a portion of our agency to align our will to God's. To surrender, far from diminishing us, paradoxically enlarges our agency by allowing us to represent Christ and participate in his work, leading to greater freedom and happiness. This is the profound spiritual lesson for our society. True freedom is found not in license, but in righteous self-governance and covenant keeping. Self-governance and covenant keeping. In other words, we are imposing, we have self-imposed chains, which, if you recognize that phrase, that's an incredible quote by Edmund Burke from the 1700s. It is amazing. In essence, what makes religion, and especially the Latter-day Saint religion, so amazing is that we have a tight bond with the Lord in which the Lord does require of those who are willing to follow Christ to live in such a way to enable ourselves to self-impose chains upon our behaviors and our manners. That way we live in a manner after Christ, in a way in which we can be free from vices, free from tyranny, and have greater levels of happiness, and ultimately create Zion. See, that's an incredible thing to think about. The freedom to choose is central to our eternal progression, the very means by which we learn, grow, and ultimately become more like our heavenly parents. The Constitution, by protecting our ability to exercise our agency, provides the essential environment for this divine process to unfold on earth. Without it, our spiritual journey is imperiled. But think about this, though. Those who want to get rid of the Constitution are those who advocate for us to live as though we are objects to be acted upon rather than agents to act for ourselves. Because just as the Constitution created an environment for us to exercise our agency more readily and able to create, a whole society of goodness, if we do not readily take upon ourselves the fullness of our agency and enjoy that environment, then we advocate for manipulating our environment in order to restrict agency. Now, we're not talking about license agency, but the ability to choose right from wrong, right? And instead compel people to live a certain way, compel them to live green, to protect the earth, or whatever you might concoct from all the political schemes that are out there. We should be very conscientious about the fact that the Constitution is inspired and it helps us have our agency in the most righteous way, or at least it allows us to use it righteously. Elder D. Todd Christofferson has taught, quote,
"Religious liberty protects not just believers but everyone. It is the taproot that sustains and nourishes many other fundamental freedoms, values, and social goods."
Without the robust protection of this freedom, other rights such as freedom and speech and press and assembly, kind of like what Elder Oaks was saying, or President Oaks, those rights are weakened without religious liberty, for their origins are deeply intertwined with the struggle for religious liberty. Christopherson has emphasized that
religion is central to the familial and community traditions and practices that sustain and give meaning to our lives, from birth to death.
The ability to freely exercise religious belief allows individuals and communities to pursue truth and contribute to the greater good of society. The founding of American freedom cannot be separated from the influence of religious teachings and convictions. Elder Christofferson has noted that the American Revolution and the subsequent establishment of the Constitution were deeply motivated by religious principles and the desire to secure God-given rights for all. The Declaration of Independence's assertion that all are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights reflects this profound connection between faith and freedom. And as Latter-day Saints, we understand that these foundational principles are rooted in eternal truths, guiding the establishment of a nation where divine principles could flourish. In today's world, Elder Christofferson warns that religious freedom is under fire and urges us to defend this heritage before it is too late. Think about that. If it can be too late, it can pass us by, it can be lost. You see, he reminds us that religious participation in public life is not only a part of American history, but also a constitutionally protected good that benefits everyone. As members of the church, we have a sacred responsibility to uphold and defend religious liberty, recognizing its vital role in preserving our ability to live and share the gospel. By standing up for religious liberty, we ensure that the freedoms at the core of our nation's founding continue to bless future generations and enable the ongoing work of the Lord. As we celebrate Independence Day, let us not merely commemorate, let us recommit. The freedoms we cherish, especially religious freedom, aren't entitlements. They are precious, hard-won gifts from God, secured through divine intervention and the immense sacrifices of wise and courageous individuals. May we, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, ever be vigilant, ever courageous, and ever active in preserving these liberties. Let us not only study the Constitution, but live by its principles. Let's actively participate in civic life, not as mere spectators, but as the Lord's agents, to ensure that these blessings endure for generations to come. As Latter-day Saints, we have an abundant reason to celebrate Independence Day, viewing it not merely as a national holiday, but as a sacred opportunity to express gratitude to God. That's actually how the Founding Fathers and the earlier Americans viewed the holiday. And we should too, and so did the earlier saints. This cherished day represents the culmination of divine intervention and human courage, echoing the profound principles of religious freedom and God-given rights that are central to our faith. It is time to reflect on the miraculous founding of a nation where the taproot of religious liberty was firmly planted, allowing the unfettered growth of other essential freedoms. Religious liberty protects everyone and is fundamental to the traditions and practices that give meaning to our lives. Therefore, let's celebrate with hearts full of praise for the Lord's guiding hand in establishing this land of liberty, recognizing that our continued freedoms are precious heritage to be defended and cherished. Thanks for listening. In the comments below, please tell me, what is your favorite thing about Independence Day? For me, it's one of my favorite holidays. Actually, probably is my most favorite holiday. And please, don't forget to share this message with someone. Share it with a friend. I appreciate you listening, your time, and I'll see you next time.